Morning once again, everybody. Perhaps the most important sentence that we need to consider today is the sentence that connects the end of the Sermon on the Mount, which we have been reflecting on for the past 3 weeks, and the connection of that sentence to what follows from here on in the Gospel of Matthew. And we're going to reflect on the Gospel of Matthew for quite some time now. You see, in the Sermon on the Mount, we saw that Matthew presents Jesus as the new Moses. However, this new Moses is unlike the old Moses in the sense that he does not just receive the law from God and give it to people, but this new Moses is the lawgiver. This Moses does not just take the law and live it, but this Moses fulfills the law. And we reflected that the crucifix is the ultimate fulfillment of the law. But now, having said all that, Matthew needs to take us forward in the Jesus story. And so he creates a connecting sentence. This is Matthew chapter 8, verse 1. When Jesus came down from the mountain after the Sermon on the Mountain, where he shared God's new law, right? The word. Great crowds followed him. So Jesus was talking to the disciples on the top of the mountain. When he comes down the mountain, and great crowds followed him. So Jesus is taking the story of redemption forward. So what is Matthew trying to show? From here on, Matthew will show that Jesus is not only powerful in word, but in deed. So now we will come to know of Jesus' ministry. For this reason, Matthew has 4 miracles that follow right after the Sermon on the Mount. We hear only one today, and tomorrow morning, of course, we don't have Mass here, Saturday, but if you're following another live stream Mass, or perhaps you go to another church where they have Mass on Saturday morning, you will hear 3 other stories. The story of the centurion, the story of Peter's mother-in-law, and then you will hear how many people just brought their ill relatives and friends to Jesus, and Jesus healed them all. So Matthew is going to tell us of all these stories. These 4 miracles will end with these words, and I want you to connect with these words today. Matthew says that Jesus did all this to fulfill what had been said by Isaiah the prophet. He took away our infirmities and bore our diseases. That's Isaiah chapter 53, verse 4. It's one of the songs to the suffering servant. We read that on Good Friday. He took away our infirmities and bore our diseases. Now, the purpose of these miracles that Matthew lays out is for people to ask the question, who is this? Who is this? Who the heck is this? Let's reflect on the story itself. So I've told you the background to the story. I've told you the story behind the story, which I always do, right? And now let's come to the story of the leper. Now, I do not have to impress upon you the misery of a leper in Jesus' time. Besides the mystery of the illness, we understand that today with COVID, don't we? The one thing that I do not want to be infected with these days is COVID. So we understand what that means. But besides that, they were ostracized from family, society, community, and worship. And this is what COVID is doing to people. There are people in their nursing homes who the families cannot see. They feel ostracized. Right? We have been separated from each other. We are afraid to come to church because we don't want this place to be the place where more people get infected. Right? And moreover, leprosy was considered an illness which was a punishment from God. So the leper felt oppressed and separated, not just from society and family, but from God. So this would be a classic example. This leper would be, or any leper in Jesus' time, would be a classic example of what I explained a few days back about somebody who is poor in spirit. What did I say was the definition of somebody who's poor in spirit? He has no one but God. No one. No one. This leper had no one but God, and he even felt abandoned by God. But he had no one but God. That's poor in spirit. But guess what? Now God himself stands in front of the leper. Just when he felt most abandoned, there is God. Notice how Matthew describes the leper approaching Jesus. The leper approached and did him homage. The leper knows. The leper knows when God stands in front of him. Even though he feels abandoned and punished by God, this man approaches God and he does him homage. So I'm going to give you 5 seconds. 5 seconds. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to think about who else approached Jesus in this way. Five seconds. The Magi, the 3 wise men, remember, who came to Jesus at his birth. What did they do? They approached and they did him homage. Matthew is connecting stories here. And you will notice when you read tomorrow's gospel reading the same reverence towards Jesus by a centurion. Now, a centurion was Roman, so in those days, pagan. A pagan was also not treated as part of the community by the Israelites. But the centurion comes and he too shows the same reverence for the sake of his servant who was dying. And his words we repeat at every Mass, Lord, I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof, but only say a word, and my servant will be healed. And we say, thy servant will be healed. We say, and I will be healed, right? We repeat those words at every Mass. These are the words of a pagan who saw Jesus and came with great reverence and awe. Now, in the case of the leper is healed by a touch, right? In the case of the centurion's servant, he's healed by word. Jesus does not touch. He doesn't even go there. See? So what is Matthew saying? Jesus is powerful in his word and in his deed. Exactly what he meant to say. So to the leper, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him. He touched him. I don't think we understand what that meant. Folks, I have done 2 funerals of people who had COVID, who died from COVID. And I've been to sometimes nursing homes, and I've been to hospitals, and I wear the entire PPE suit, and I go, and I am so careful that I do not touch. Jesus touched. At this point, Jesus has broken every law, religious and social, that is prescribed in Leviticus chapter 14. He's broken every law. However, Jesus is not just a lawbreaker. In the Sermon on the Mount, we saw how he fulfills the law. So what does he tell the leper? Go and show yourself to the priest and let them declare you clean. So Jesus is not just throwing off the law. He's not abolishing the law. What is he doing? He's fulfilling the law. The very law that ostracized people, Jesus uses the very law to bring the leper back into communion with family, with society, with faith. Practical implications for today. Practical implications for today. First, let us approach Christ with the same awe and reverence of the leper and of the centurion. The same reverence. Folks, today is our day. Here is Jesus, who's powerful in word and in deed. Today is our day. So approach this Eucharist if you're at home watching this Mass. As we make spiritual communion, and if you are present here in church today, let there be simply awe, and let us do homage. Jesus can heal either by touch or by word. For example, today I'm praying for a young woman whose name is Carolyn, and she is showing all the symptoms of COVID, but she has tested twice negative for COVID, but they don't know why she's showing these symptoms. Family reached out to me, please pray for her. Dear God, please reach out and touch her. But dear God, maybe you can even say just a word. I think of little Reagan who has been struggling with a tumor in her brain that's malignant from the time she was a little child. She had another surgery yesterday. Dear God, please reach out and touch this little girl. Pray for baby Rebecca. Her white cell, she's only a year old. She's had a liver transplant. And her white blood cells numbers are really down, which means there is an infection. Dear God, reach out and touch this little baby. Who else? Who else? Do you know of people that today you would want Christ to just reach out and touch? If not, just say a word and they will be healed. Let's come in awe to do homage, and let's say, Lord, if you can make these people and heal us and make us clean. Please do. Christ is here. Christ is here. Let us approach him in awe and do him homage. Amen.